I am going to introduce today's esteemed guest. As a Goldman Sachs 10,000 small business alum, Shantera Chatman is noted for her significant leadership accomplishments with her clients and of founding the Chapman Women's Foundation in Houston, Texas. As the president of PowHer, and that's POW, capital HER, Consulting, Shantera is known for her guiding principles in developing strong cultures in workplaces. Shantera is also an author, speaker, and creator of the Her Way Retreat, an exclusive Black female executive retreat. Welcome to the stage, Shantera.
Hey, can you see me?
Oh, we can now. There you go. We just had to enable the video button. Yeah. Perfect. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing well. So the audience knows we're both alum of the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. And I'm pretty sure we've got several alums on the call with us today. And that's how we met. We met at the summit in DC, right? Because I'm from Virginia, you're from Texas. We may have never otherwise met. So what a wonderful program it has been. I'd like to turn the attention towards you, though. There were a lot of things in your bio that I did not read. You have a lot of accomplishments and accolades. So tell me, let's start out with just telling me a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned I'm here in Houston, Texas. It's a little warm here. I don't know what the weather's like there, but I'm here in Houston, Texas, born and raised. And I started my career as a consultant. So I've been a consultant my entire career. Graduated from Texas A&M University in 1998 and went right into working as a consultant for Booz Allen Hamilton consulting firm. And I was a consultant for NASA, actually, for 13 years. So from there, after working for NASA for 13 years as a strategic management consultant in the aerospace industry, I worked in the oil and gas industry, actually, as a consultant in change management, organizational development. And that's where I kind of got the culture development bug in that oil and gas industry. I did that for about 6 years and decided to step out on my own and formed PowHer Consulting and been doing this for the past 4 years. And I decided to step out on my own because I felt like, one, I could do it better. And two, in all of the jobs and all of the corporations that I seem to have worked with as a consultant, going into other companies and doing things for other companies and other corporations, I seem to be the only person, the only one either that looked like me or the only person that seemed to, have different ideas or wanted to step out the box. But I never found someone to champion me in any of those spaces. I never had an ally in any of those spaces. And so I always found myself trying to change a culture, trying to build or rebuild a culture in a way where I could find a space where I belonged. And so I thought that I wanted to help companies understand, one, what that felt like, and hopefully it would help others in the organizations who want to stay. There are people who don't want to step out on their own. They want to stay in companies. They want to find a sense of belonging. And so maybe I can, one, help companies understand you are missing out on great talent if you keep pushing them out the door by not helping them to find their safe space. And two, helping them to try to build that culture. So that's what we do with PowHer Consulting, is help our clients build these strong cultures. And we do that through strategic planning. We do that through immersive learning and development. And that means that it's not just training. I actually put them in situations like I had. I make them feel like I felt. So I use myself and I put them in different situations so they can understand what that felt like. And then we start to make small changes and start to rebuild their culture.
So you're raising their awareness through role-playing situations? Is that what I just understood?
Well, not all role-playing, but through different experiences. So as we're going through these different training opportunities, we are actually just deep diving. And it may be a case study. It may be, different types of ways that they can start to feel some kind of way. And so I'm trying to tap into different types of scenarios where they can start to feel something. And it's not just about telling my story, it's trying to figure out how they can feel my story or feel someone else's story. So if I'm showing them a video or showing them a piece of a movie clip or whatever, we're going to get to the heart of what that person was feeling like in the movie or what I felt like in my situation. And I may not even tell them it was my situation because I've taken pieces of my story and I've had voiceover professionals recreate that in, different scenarios. And I have clips that I put throughout my training and they hear it and we start to talk through it and we start to build on different scenarios. And it's not until the end of the training that I even disclose that it's me. So we're walking through things because I don't want them to be like, oh, she's just, using this as one big, stage for her. No, I want them to just kind of, flow with it and think that it, be a part of a scenario and put them in it. And different pieces of it may be role playing. Some of it just may be, let's just think through a scenario. Let's just think through a case study. Let's just walk through this situation. Mm-hmm. And we start to have these group activities. We start having different types of team dialogues and they just start to, reevaluate problems. And sometimes, I may have had conversations with their boss or something, or, one of the other team members, and I get scenarios from them. And we start to weave those real world examples into the trainings as well. And so they start to, before they know it, they've actually fixed their own issues. So we just kind of, just start to slowly build that momentum with a team. And I also make them understand that this is not going to happen overnight. These are things that we're doing little by little. And we may start off with something around like maybe unconscious bias. And before you know it, we've rolled into something like allyship.
And that takes us to the heart of our conversation today, is allyship. So what I would like you to do, I'll be very honest with you. I had not heard the term. Okay. And I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable about the space. Clearly, I'm not as knowledgeable as I think I am. The saying of you don't know what you don't know until you learn it came to mind. So tell us what allyship is.
And you're not the only person, first of all, that had never heard the term ally or allyship. It's one of these words that became a buzzword really, really quickly, maybe 3 years ago? After George Floyd's murder on TV, all of a sudden everyone started using this word. And I'm thinking, I don't think people know what this means. I don't think people even know what ally is. You start seeing #ally all over the place. And I would say maybe 2 years ago, dictionary.com made it the word of the year because it was used so much. And I was thinking, well, did dictionary.com actually tell you what the word meant? And, we saw that it was dictionary, it was the word of the year, but they never really talked about what it was. And I know it's, a noun and it's this and it's that. I said, but, there's a lot of action that goes with it. And so I like to tell people that, an ally is someone that understands what it's like to understands how to navigate this space around culture, this space around equity, inclusiveness, all of these things that tends to be buzzwords that people don't really understand what they mean, but they also understand what it means to be accountable, to be held accountable for their actions, and what it means to give someone grace. Because we're all human. And so they live in this world they understand what it means to be inclusive and diverse because they live inclusive and diverse lives anyway. They're not trying to be someone at work and then someone different at home. And so this ally is always looking at people for who they are and understanding that we have to try to make space for everyone. We always have to try to figure out what someone else needs and how to get that person what they need in order to make them succeed in the workplace or in their home. They understand the difference between equality and equity.
And so my understanding is also that there are certain pillars of allyship. And can you explain what those are?
So yes, for me, and this is, these are definitely things that I've created through, I have this framework entitled the Transformative Ally Framework. I created when I first started working with with the curriculum writer to start teaching around allyship and ally, what it is to be an ally. And so I created I talk about these three pillars: advocacy, support, and coexistence. And to me, there are these three pillars. And these three pillars are not to say, once I've accomplished these things, I'm an ally forever and I've gone through it and there's a certification. No. It's an evergreen process, meaning you're going to continuously be working at it because life happens. But advocacy, that's your voice, right? That is what you do, and how you're continuously deciding how you're going to champion a person or a group. And so a lot of people will say, yeah, I advocate for, this group of people or this person. Well, possibly. If you decide to use your sphere of influence to send an email or to, even use your voice specifically to speak up for someone or a group that may be marginalized or may not be treated properly, yes, you are advocating. So there is that one form of advocacy and that one pillar, in my opinion, to allyship. But then there's support. And support takes a lot more. Support takes a lot of your energy. And sometimes I tell people, you may not be ready for that because support takes on a lot of time, because you have to take on sometimes a lot of the emotional stress that goes along with what that other person or that group may be going through. And so you have to be honest with yourself, and you may say, am I ready for that? You may want to hang out in advocacy for a little while and use your voice and send emails and make phone calls and do those things for a while, because you may not have the bandwidth to support the way that group or that person needs you to support them. Because when you think about it, allyship is a trusted relationship. You cannot declare yourself an ally without having a relationship with the other person or the other group. If you've never spoken with them and know what their needs are, you're not their ally. So that support system, you have to understand what it's going to take to be their support system. And then finally, coexistence. That is saying that I may not understand or even, really agree with every single thing that you're doing, but I do know that you're a human being and you are worth being advocated for, because you work here with me. If we're in the workplace, you deserve to be respected because you work here with me. And so I'm going to respect you for who you are. I'm going to respect you for the value you bring to the table. And we can coexist as leaders together, and we can work together, because I don't have to go home with you and live in the same space with you and know all things that you're doing in your life. But we can coexist as coworkers. We can coexist as, leaders on this team. And so that's what coexistence means, is that I don't have to know every single detail of your life to know that you deserve to be respected. And I'm going to help you to try to get to that point, or you deserve to be paid the same, or you deserve to be treated fairly. And I'm going to try to help you to knock down those barriers.
I do a lot of interviewing, and, we're hiring. And so I talk to a lot of people, and a young lady that came through the other day told me that the reason for her leaving her prior job was that men and women were treated differently. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about the pay in this specific instance. It was, we're held to a higher accountability standard. We're disciplined more often. And the men, when they make a oops, it's like, oh, no big deal. Whereas the women are like, you should have known this, you're on notice. How can someone go to their employer, their organization, their club, man or woman, mm-hmm. to begin this allyship and create a better circumstance?
One, you have to be, willing to put yourself out there. And sometimes you're not, because it's scary. You don't know how that other person is going to respond. especially if you don't have a trusting relationship, if you don't trust your leaders, if you've never had that courageous conversation with them or any type of courageous conversation with your leadership, or if you've had one before and it didn't go well, you're thinking, okay, here we go again. The question is, do I have someone that I can go with? Can I, find someone that I can work with, and we go in as a team and we try to figure out, how do we couch this conversation? How do we start? Because you don't have to go in and go all in fast and say, if you don't do it this way, we're walking out. There may be an opportunity to maybe start with something small, or maybe say, how do we have like a listening session? And just bring in the managers or bring in some of the leaders and allow them to just hear us, where they are just listening and allowing us to just talk. And we're not talking about where we're just airing all grievances and everybody's just attacking. No, just allowing us to just share our thoughts, and where possibly we can share some solutions too. So it's not just about airing the grievances, but some possible solutions. Or, hey, hadn't we been able to possibly speak up here, or you use this idea, you missed an opportunity to, what was the reward on the other side that you may have gained? So showing that there would have been a positive outcome had they been able to, proceed with maybe an idea that they didn't listen to, things of that nature. So it may be to start with maybe an opportunity to just listen, and, so being able to get to that point first.
Yeah, those listening sessions, that's a great suggestion. I absolutely love that. And partnering up with someone to feel like somebody's got your back.
Yeah. So finding someone else to go with you that may have a little bit more clout or have a little bit more sphere of influence if you don't have it yourself.
And you touched on something that's really important, because one of the questions I was going to ask was about the barriers to becoming, an ally. And you touched on the fear piece. So can you expound on that and, talk about other barriers?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So beyond the fear of being an ally, because sometimes people are just scared to have conversations. You mentioned it at the beginning of the conversation. You don't know what you don't know. So you don't know what's going to come out of having a conversation around allyship. People are still so very afraid to have conversations around diversity. They're so afraid to mention any of the words diversity, equity, inclusion, and allyship is so closely connected. It's like a cousin to the word. So you don't know what's going to come out of it. And so I think that people are afraid still to have those conversations. And so that's one thing. But then the other barriers to true allyship is really the performative piece. For so long, people have been, as I mentioned, everybody putting #ally out on social media. Now, people from marginalized groups don't even trust anyone who wants to use the word. The word has been so overly used. It's so trendy. It's such a buzzword that most people don't even trust the use of it anymore. So that performative part of it is a barrier to allyship now. And then bias is a barrier, because unconsciously or consciously, there are people who just automatically go into situations with their bias right there in the front. They automatically assume they know something about a person or a group of people that it's very difficult for them to listen. And the first thing you need to do, if you're going to be an ally, in that first pillar about advocacy, in order to be an advocate and speak up for someone, you have to have been able to listen to them to understand what you're speaking up about. So you have to close your mouth and you have to let someone tell their truth. And so your bias sometimes gets in the way of that.
And you can even see, I like to talk. So sometimes, I step on your conversation a little bit, and I apologize.
No, that's okay. But that's a little different from someone trying to interject their thoughts on yours, or trying to say, no, but that's really not how it happened, right? There are people who will try to take over your experiences, and that will shut down someone that will shut down the relationship right away. If someone's coming to me to say that they want to be an ally for me, and they say, okay, tell me what happened. And so I start to tell my story, and then they interject in the middle of the story to try to say, but that probably was just you overthinking it, and they start to do that to me. So they've automatically started to shut me down. They've started to think that maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. They're using their thoughts and their bias to say that my truth is not true.
And it is your truth.
It's mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So part of what we also want to talk today about, so we've got the base understanding of allyship and some of, the challenges of it, both from being an ally and trusting an ally. Mm-hmm. So let's roll this into talking about the mentorship piece and mm-hmm. the empowerment. How can we move this needle forward with taking true allyship,
right,
and creating these situations for women that advance us, make us stronger?
I would say, like you use that word mentorship. Mentoring is so powerful, especially when we're talking about, mentoring in the workplace, and even, as an entrepreneur, finding strong mentors are really, really important. People who are willing to share their knowledge, people who are willing to guide us, whether they're male or female. I've always had strong male mentors. It's kind of, I guess, the industries that I've worked in. When it comes to aerospace, it's a, kind of a male dominated space, and even in the oil and gas industry. But I've had a lot of male mentors, but I've just had, and they've been really good mentors for me, and I've been grateful for that. But I think it's pivotal for women to find mentors that just support them. And it goes a long way for allyship, but also just in that women's empowerment space too, because it helps us to find our voice, because for us, we need to be able to be comfortable in our own skin, and we need to be comfortable hearing our voice and hearing ourselves say the hard things. And the hard things sometimes, especially for me as an entrepreneur, the hard thing was hearing myself say my fee, as a consultant, and being okay with my fee. And I also was okay with the silence afterwards, and not, trying to say, but I'm willing to negotiate, just being okay with it, having those mentors to help me through those types of things, to help me be strong in me. And be strong in that kind of truth on the entrepreneur side. And then on the side in the workplace of maybe even negotiating salaries and things like that. Because, those are parts that women sometimes tend to be uncomfortable with. They talk around money. Mm-hmm. And so having a mentor to help talk you up on those sides, to help you to be strong in that space, is really, really important.
It's interesting because I don't know what the statistic specifically is, but in the financial space, they talk about how women make all the financial decisions of the household. But when it comes to talking about what we need financially in the workplace, we get all gishy about it. And I also find it interesting that, you stated that you had some very strong male mentors. So, as women, we always feel like we need a role model like us. Mm-hmm. At least I think so. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I found it fascinating that you had some excellent male role models. So how do we get men more involved in that?
I think getting men more involved is, one, getting them comfortable with these types of conversations. Mm-hmm. Having these same types of conversations with a room full of men, explaining what it means to having them understand what it means to be an ally truthfully, what it means to us to have a seat at the table, and for them to get up from the table from time to time. Because being an ally doesn't always mean that you sit at the table and amplify their voice. It's great for them to be able to amplify a woman's voice from time to time. But I think also a great role for a man as an ally would be to remove themselves from the table when they no longer are serving the best purpose and allow a woman to step in.
And that's the empowerment piece.
That's the empowerment piece. Because if they know that this is a topic is being discussed that, you know, they may not be the best fit for, but they know that Sharon is, why not call Sharon to the table? It's not going to take away from your influence. You still have that seat. No one's going to take that seat away from you. You're a man. You're going to keep your seat. But you just bring her in. He was like, hey, I know Sharon and I were just talking about this over the lunch yesterday. How about I bring her in for this, you know, just 30-minute conversation? Mm-hmm. That way, Sharon gets to have a seat, get a say. Her voice is heard. Her face is being seen. And rather than you just using her words and paraphrasing what she said to you over lunch, she gets to say it herself. So having that conversation with them, helping them to understand what that means, is what I feel like needs to happen a lot more. And for me, I think that because I was in a space where there were so many men, I didn't have a lot of women to choose from for mentors. And also I feel like I was lucky in that, you know, coming out of college, I did run into one person, Doug, that I actually modeled my transformative ally framework after, because he was such a fantastic ally for me. And at that time, I didn't even know what an ally was. But as I started to write it, I was like, this is what Doug did for me all those years ago. Mm-hmm. And he's still a really good friend of mine right now today. So it's just some people, you know, he's been walking that walk for me for over 20 years, where there's someone that I can always call and just check in with. And then I have another who's a man that I've always been able to check in with. That's been over 20 years. Same company from Booz Allen Hamilton, that I've always been able to just check in whenever I had a question. And so I count myself lucky and blessed to have those two.
I know you work most often with larger companies, but in the smaller company space, what are some ways that we can provide mentorship?
Oh yeah, in the smaller companies, I do have some smaller clients as well. I've kind of said some of the same things actually, because it may not be that it's on such a large scale, but that smaller companies where you're going to see the rewards much faster, because they have the one-on-one the connection so much quickly. In the smaller organizations, being able to have lunch meetings and being able to have those conversations, like that listening session I mentioned. They're able to have a listening session with 5 people, possibly, or 3 people, and they're gonna see results really quickly, because the leader in that room is going to take it to heart, and they're going to start moving on things very, very fast. Or if you're mentoring, being able to have that one-on-one conversation almost immediately, and going back and having having sessions with them, setting up, sessions maybe quicker with that person versus someone who may have a larger team. They're going to have to try to figure out how to maybe delegate some of their mentoring responsibilities to mid-level managers, versus in a smaller organization, you're going to get right to your leader. They're going to be the ones possibly, you're going to be mentoring right with, the person who's running the company possibly, or someone that's, right below them. And so you're going to be getting very, very detailed and probably very vulnerable insight into how your leadership feels. And you're going to be growing together. And that's what's great about the smaller organizations, because they are a lot more vulnerable, and they do feel like they're family once it's done. And they take it to heart, because they are trying to build something as a unit, versus the bigger companies where it's kind of written into the performance review, and it becomes part of what they have to do every 6 months.
It's far more transactional versus relational.
Exactly.
So we created an internship program, and we're still building it. It's still in process, but we identified early on that we wanted to intern young women. Okay. And we've had 3 so far. One is a college, 2 have been college graduates, and 1 was still in high school. And what we found was, particularly the young lady in high school, she was wavering back and forth with, I'm not sure if I want to go to college and these sorts of things. Nobody in my family has gone to college, and I'm still in touch with her. She actually asked me the other day, she's like, can you help me fill out my FAFSA? I was like, yes, But what we found was when we paired them up with our employees to talk to them, all of a sudden their energy level changed, So is that something that you employ in the work that you do, particularly with smaller companies?
Can I connect them with the younger students? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Just those opportunities to naturally mentor, in their organization, intentionally mentor as well.
Yes, yes, because shadowing, younger or new employees tends to bring out leadership qualities that you didn't know you had in some of your staff, especially those who tend to be very quiet. Your introverts, you don't know what they want, because they tend to be, they're introverted. They're small, they're quiet, and they're sitting in their corners. But you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what they like and they don't like, and all of a sudden, they get a student worker or a new worker, a new hire, and they start flourishing. And you're thinking, I missed something, or I almost missed something with that person, because here's someone who's been quiet, and I was thinking that they were standoffish. I was thinking they didn't want to be a part of the team,
or disengaged,
or they're disengaged, right? And now it looks like they were a natural leader, and they have this ability to teach. They have this ability to, guide in a way that I didn't know. And so, yes, these are great opportunities to be able to see who has different types of qualities, because it could be that you just have them in the wrong role. And this is an opportunity to show it.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely love that. So we talked briefly about you being an author. Can you talk about your books just a little bit?
Oh, yeah. So when I left corporate America, I wrote a book called PowHer Play, a women's empowerment guide. And that discussed, and that was my first book to talk about really what happened and why I wanted to step away. I talked about some of the things that happened to me when I left NASA. My tires were slashed, and, just being me losing my voice for a while. And I wanted to be able to just share, because I have my women's foundation, the Chapman Women's Foundation, and I'm always telling women about finding your voice and never losing your voice. And I found myself not having my voice. And I wanted to be able to share that. I wanted to talk about what that felt like for me, and just kind of what kind of activities I went through. So the book kind of has some little spaces where you can write in and start to kind of take notes of little activities and things that I did, and to kind of regain my voice. And so it was just me to reshare and kind of sharing my story. Again, everything's about me kind of throwing myself on the sword and on the grenade to share that sometimes we lose our voices, and what the journey looked like to get back to me. The second book was about, it's again, getting back to, the voice, empowering you, 12 tips to finding your voice. So after I told the story of me kind of losing my voice and walking away, I went deeper into what it took for me to actually just kind of regain it and kind of put it into step by step, those tips that it takes to regain your voice. And so that's what that second book was about. So both of those were around that women's empowerment of doing that. And by the third book, it was a micro book around the transformative ally framework. And I took that book, that micro book, and turned it into a full-fledged workbook that I use in a 6 workshop series for my clients around allyship.
Okay. And you actually teach the transformative allyship
Yes.
framework.
Yes,
That's what I
so
thought.
it's a 6 workshop series. It's an intensive because we get a little deep, and so sometimes people will call me, and I've done it done it as kind of a keynote speech. I've kind of taken some pieces of it and turned into hour and a half sessions, or maybe a 60-minute keynote speech. But the real deep one is a 6-session series, intensive series.
Gotcha. So I mentioned very early on that you and I had met in DC, and we
Mm-hmm.
had an opportunity there to do some advocacy. Now, it wasn't specifically about things for women, but I think maybe we should talk about what we did there because it can still be applied to advocating for women's rights.
Right.
So would you like to add in something or?
No, I thought that was great. That was the first time that Goldman Sachs Summit one, besides it being just absolutely amazing. I'm a new graduate of Goldman Sachs, the 10,000 Small Business Program. So that was my first time attending, but to go to Advocacy Day and to advocate for your business, that was my first time, participating in that way. Right. And I was thinking, this is great to be able to speak up for your business and to speak out about something that's near and dear to you. And to your point, to be able to go and speak to government officials about something that's near and dear to you. And we were speaking on behalf of our businesses, right? About the SBA, about, acquiring capital for our businesses and things of that nature. But the same thing can be said for women's rights. The same things can be said for, for equality and equal pay and things of that nature. Being able to go and speak to, government officials and to teach how to pitch, succinctly, because you may only get 12 minutes. You may only get 15, or even if you're scheduled for 30 minutes, they may not show up on time and you only get 5. How do you?
That actually happened in my group.
And well, ours didn't show up till 15, 20 minutes later, but he gave the whole time, but he didn't show up till late. And so it's just like, you got to be flexible, but also once you're flexible, be willing to, succinct your message, take your message down to the bare bones of it, take that emotion out and get to what you need as quickly as you possibly can. And so I think that's also something that gets to the heart of, for us as women, when we're talking about, equal pay and, us on Women's Equality Day now, and the things that we need as women. A lot of times we want to get to the heart of it by telling our stories, right? And talking about, well, when I was this and I have all of these things that's happened to me. Sometimes, especially when we're talking to our officials and leadership, we have to get past those pieces and get right to the heart of our story, the heart of what we're trying to, what are we trying to gain? Let's get to the executive summary of it.
Right.
And let's look them right in the eye and get to it.
So first of all, ladies, guests who are on here today, you can look up who your representatives are, both your representatives and your senators. Yeah, that's completely, able to find. You can get emails, you can get on their email list. And this is the second advocacy event that I've participated in. The first one, we talked about, because we were in the midst of the pandemic at that point, we talked about, childcare for working mothers. That's another thing that, really is a women's issue. We need to make sure that, the people that are in that gap, they're not making tons of money, but they're not in, they're not being paid minimum wage, but they still are struggling. Childcare is like $450 or $500 a week. It is crazy expensive. So if you're making $15 an hour, you can't afford to go to work. And we're losing women in the workforce for that reason. So whatever it is that you feel like needs to be advocated for women, I encourage you, join a group like NABO. They do advocacy. Okay. They absolutely do advocacy for women. find out individually who your leaders are in your city, your state, your senators, your representatives. I actually went to 4 sessions when we were there in DC. And it was phenomenal. It was great. They each had something different, a little different to say, and talked about what they were working with. And it's really nice to meet, your senator. That's kind of cool to me. So I love the advocacy piece as far as with government. And are there any other ways that you would like to add for, advocacy for, women's rights and, the needs that we have as women?
I think that, yes, any time that you have an opportunity to use your voice in any way, there's so many different ways you can use your voice. It's not just about going and just speaking up, verbally, understanding that your voice shows up in so many different ways. Your voice is, writing a letter. Your voice is sending an email. Your voice is, making a phone call or showing up somewhere. So thinking about how you're comfortable using your voice, how, advocacy feels comfortable to you. What does it look like and feel like to you as a business owner or as a person who works, in, Joe Blow Corporation, whatever that is? What does that feel like to you? And what's comfortable? And then start to think about how can I use this voice, this space, this sphere of influence to my advantage to help further the cause for women and for women like me. So think on it, because I think for each one of us, it's different. And what's going to feel good for me may not feel good for Denise, may not feel good for someone else on the that's listening in and watching right now. And so it doesn't have to be the same, but just do something, and don't feel like you have to do what everyone else is doing. And also don't feel like you have to post it on social media either. I think that's one thing that everyone feels like they have to tell everyone what they're doing. You don't. I'm just, just kind of letting you off the hook in that way. It's just, kind of just play around with it and just see what works.
Yes. So I have a comment about about social media, but if anybody has questions, go ahead and put those through chat. So what I was going to say about social media, in any case, you're going to have people that are for and against it. So unless you're willing to deal with the bashing and the negativity, you're right. Absolutely don't put it on social media. I just, sometimes I see great conversation. Sometimes I see horrible things.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what your style of interaction is.
Mm-hmm. 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 Absolutely. Shantera, you have been absolutely amazing. I greatly appreciate it. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so grateful for you having been here today.